16th February 2023. We've got the important, not least, the Building Affair Annuum 2020-23 to 24 budget settlement report that provides details around our financial plan for the coming year. If I can just draw everyone's attention to the agenda as published, because I just want to advise on a slight change in the order of the agenda. So on the overall financial position, on the Building Affair Annuum budget settlement report, which is cost 59 to 606, those pages include an appendix representing the Budget Working Commission's report following their consideration of the executive's draft budget proposals that were published in December of last year. And I will be taking that appendix as a separate agenda item. So it's a new agenda item, which we will take as a new agenda item 6 before we then go on to the substantive Building Affair Annuum budget setting report. So in essence, insertion of one new agenda item, which becomes the agenda item, new agenda item 6. And then the current agenda item 6 becomes agenda item 7. And then there's for the running order of the items thereafter. We also have with us this morning the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, who is also the Principal Chair of the Budget Working Commission. And I wish to formally welcome Councillor Anthony McColmont to today's meeting. And we look forward to your presentation and engaging with you on the vital work that you've been leading in your role as Chair of Overview and Scrutiny and of the Budget Working Commission over the past few months. So is everyone clear about that? Brilliant. Okay, and then just to advise that there is also a supplementary agenda that has been published later than the main papers that we're considering today, and that's Building Affair Annuum revised Appendix 5, the HRA business plan summary. So that's that, and that needs to replace the existing one. Yeah, okay, great. And that's to accompany the Building Affair Annuum 2023-24 budget setting report. Right. And just a few housekeeping rules. If you could kindly, for the purpose of those members and press that may be watching this proceeding via the Live Council's YouTube channel, just introduce yourself across the items they're going to be considering and engaging with. And the same for any officers that will be participating this morning. So let's get cracking. Can I receive, Joy, for any formal apologies for absence received?
Yes, Chair, I received apologies from absence from Councillor Sarah Ruiz and Charters.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other apologies for absence that we need to note?
Just apologies for the lateness, Chair.
Okay, great.
For myself.
Apologies from Councillor Rivers.
Okay, that's been captured. It's all right, don't worry. All right, fine. Let's move on. Declarations of, oh, sorry.
Apologies from Steve Rachel.
And apologies. Right, brilliant. Thank you very much. Moving on to declarations of interests covering pages 7 to 8. Can I just ask all members of the Cabinet and the wider executive to advise if there are any declarations that they need to be making at this morning's cabinet meeting. I'm going to take that as a no, Satish as monitoring officer and also as committee. If we move on to minutes of decisions made on the 17th of January of this year across pages 9 to 18, I'm gonna assume that these have all been read. Are there any inaccuracies that have been spotted? I can't see any hands up. And can I just, for cabinet members only, seek agreement that the minutes as set out are an accurate record? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Right, thank you very much. And on to the appointments to outside bodies. There are no appointments to outside bodies to be announced today. And then we're going to be jumping on to agenda item 5, overall financial position, 2022 to 2023. This is a Q3 report, and we know it's been a very tough year, and the subsequent Q4 report will be coming back, coming to cabinet in July as part of July financial review. But I'm going to invite Councillor Zulfikar Ali and other relevant finance officers to talk to this, and then we'll open up to any questions. Over to you, Zulfikar.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Zulfikar Ali, for Finance and Resources. As you rightly said, this has been quite a challenge, lots of uncertainties in national economic crisis. We have faced the highest cost situation, rising energy costs, highest inflation in 40 years, and there are many uncertainties, and this is against the backdrop of 60% reduction in government fundings over the last 20 years. So this report is the Q3 report, which takes us up to December 2022, 9 months into the current financial year. And as you will note, Chair, that 9 financial monitoring report indicates a 5.9 million overspend, and this is 1.9 improvement on the previous position which we reported on month 5. Slightly better news, but clearly there are many challenges. 5.7 million out of 5.9 is a provision of temporary accommodation for households in need. A statutory responsibility that we as a local authority have to comply with. And the remaining 0.2 million, that is 200K, is an overspend across the rest of the directors. Whilst temporary accommodation costs have and are having impact on the current year budget, it will be fair to say that if we exclude those, 200K is roughly 0.01% of £327 million budget that we have, which I think is an excellent testimony if we were to take out the temporary accommodation cost. The robust financial management systems we have put in place. PA cost is a national crisis, and this is as a result of the failure of the government policies to adequately invest in local authorities to fund them to meet those costs, and that is against the backdrop again of 48% reduction in private sector housing market, and naturally with high inflation, rents are also. The 1.9 improvement since period 2 has been a result of a number of action the council has taken across the board, and I think it will be fair to say, Chair, that since 2018, this administration has put in place robust financial management systems in place through internal control mechanism to ensure that we spend public money wisely and cost effectively. We have also looked at various opportunities to ensure that we reduce temporary accommodation cost, and I'm sure my housing colleague, Councillor Shaban Mohammed, can address the meeting later on if needed be to answer any questions. But there are going to be a tangible reduction in that area because we have put in place some robust plans to have an impact in terms of the numbers that are going through the temporary accommodation costs. So there is an overspend at this stage, but I'm fairly confident that we do have a good track record historically since 2018 at least whereby the financial position at the end of the year is better than usually what is reported in earlier quarters. So I'm confident that will be the case, and I will ask my Corporate Director of Finance and Section 151 officers to come in later to shed more light on that. But we feel that there is going to be a further reduction. And the key issue is if there is an overspend at the end of the year, that will not have any bearing on the next year's budget proposal that you will be discussing shortly. We are looking at every possibility to reduce the overspend, are looking at possible repurposing some reserves, not the general fund reserve. So again, I will emphasize that there will be no impact of any overspend, if any overspend is in appear on the general fund reversing at all. Slightly better news, the inflation has been going down during the last 3 months, and it said it will continue to do so. And if that happens, clearly that will have some beneficial impact in terms of the overall position. That is, I have to say, Chair, and I'll invite John the whole and Corporate Director of Finance to to add whether he does add anything or add the board.
Please do.
Chair, with your permission, I'll just say one or two things. The benefit of those online when they on the call. I'm the Council Corporate Director of Legal. There's just 3 things I wanted to highlight and to emphasise in what Councillor Ellis said in that introduction. First, it's clearly been a very challenging year financially. It's been for residents and families. Everyone will be familiar with the impact of inflation on their own household budgets, and that has significantly impacted on. Nonetheless, as Councillor Ellis pointed out, if one excludes the significant issues in accommodation, the current position is £200,000, less than 0.01% over its budget, and the considerable effort will go into improve that position in the remaining 6 weeks of the financial year. Of course, we are caught up in perfect storm of significant costs for temporary accommodation driven by market factors. On the direct control, we're intervening in lots of ways to boost supply, and the likelihood is that there will be a remaining overspend by the end of the financial year. As Councillor Ali points out, if that is the case, we will ensure that is charged against a repurposed earmark reserve in order to preserve the general fund balance, which as members will appreciate as we come on to the next item in terms of setting the budget. It is essential that we continue to work towards rebuilding reserve to the level that they were pre-pandemic when the council used many of the reserves immediately in order to support the emergency response. So that's the current position on the latest monitoring report that we have. As I say, we'll continue to do all the work that we can to reduce that position between now and the year end, but the scale of the issues that we face on temperature such that it is unlikely we will be able to reduce that to nil by the year end. But again, to emphasise, excluding temporary accommodation, the overspend is less than 0.01%. Colleague Andrew Ward, I don't know if there's anything with your Commission Chair that you'd like to add to that.
Please.
Thank you. Andrew Ward, Assistant Director of Finance. I think the main points on the general fund have been addressed. The report, of course, covers the entirety of the overall budget monitoring council. There is appendices on there which cover the housing revenue account, the HRA, and the dedicated skills fund. Then there's the DSG. So the HRA is not quite on budget, but still making a sizable contribution back to the HRA reserve in line with its longer term business plan. On the DSG, we're forecasting a slight underspend. I think that's significant. So that's the first slight underspend we've seen on the issue for a number of years. There's also information in the appendices on the capital forecast, and our capital spend in line with the Q2 budget monitoring is up on previous years, showing more delivery this year as we completed progress in the capital programme. There's an MTFS savings track. So most savings are being achieved. Some of those which are not are being addressed. The achievement is slightly delayed, and that's reported in a transparent way through the monitoring. I pick up there some of those not achieved related to procurement savings, which when I think about the next report, setting a report is something that's being addressed, setting a robust budget for next year. Across the whole position, work is continuing. We are in the middle of the period 10 budget monitoring at the moment. I know personal experience that management are working hard to find further mitigations to bring the overspend down. And certainly my finance service is providing a challenge on those forecasts to make sure we get as accurate as through that process as possible.
Thank you very much. I'm going to up to some questions in a moment. I'm also going to be inviting relevant cabinet members to also talk to some of the forecast overspends in their areas, just to ensure that we're demonstrating transparency in bringing these to the attention in this public forum, as we do in all forums. I just wanted to ask Andrew and Conrad on the TA position. Firstly, I should say the reduction of 1.9 million from the position reported in month 5 is very welcomed, and acknowledging that the 5.7 million out of the 5.9 million position as it is presently is temporary accommodation pressures. How does that TA pressure compare in other local authorities in terms of their budget positions? Because we rightly identify that in all fairness, if you take out the TA elements of the overspend, we're at 0.01% of the planned budget as agreed in March last year. That 0.01% is really good news, and we will close that, all being well, when we see the final quarter report later this year. But yeah, how does it compare to other councils presently?
Okay, thank you for that, Chair. So I think we would want to see the data at the year end, get a kind of complete analysis of that. But in advance of that, I think it's very clear that the scale of the housing pressures human faces are as great as, if not greater than, anywhere else in the country. Certainly in London, which I know better, other parts of the country will be sort. The numbers of people that we have in temporary accommodation are higher than elsewhere in London, and the reduction in the supply available in the private sector, 47%, has been more marked than anywhere else in London, which in turn, of course, adds pressure to our temporary accommodation budget. And I should emphasise in all of this, we're talking here about the financial impact of that on the council. Of course, those families housed in temporary accommodation also clearly not receiving the kind of quality of housing want them to be able to. So the pressures are greater than elsewhere, hence the significant investment in prevention services, and in building new homes and in conditions in order to try and mitigate that. And those are good and successful programs. important emphasising the scale of the challenge that we face and the sort of significant element of market failure makes trying to tackle the whole of that problem for you a long-term affair. Proposals in the budget seek to full year end data available, then kind of fuller or more detailed statistical analysis of that may be available. What I've set out there would be good and accurate summary on the position that we face.
Very much. Neil Wilson, would you like to just talk to adults forecast overspend? Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care. On pages 33 through to 34, there's an outline that there was forecast overspend, and the net underlying overspend, which I'll refer to in the next report, Chair, is approximately at 5.5 relating to social care placements, but that has been partially offset by, excuse me, projected underspends elsewhere in the Directorate, and a very good work by our officer team in terms of maximisation of external one-off grants. And I think that the Cabinet needs to be reassured that we'll continue to review that external funding to maximise, to try to bring down that overspend further by the end of the year, when it will be reported as the end of Q4, the next quarter report. Obviously, we've undertaken a review of individual cost centres, and that will be subject to the report that I will give in the next item under next year's budget. There's been some small restructuring in terms of staffing, and I think it's important to stress, because I know there's been comments elsewhere about the Directorate employing agency workers. Is actually now at 77 against a Directorate limit of 90. So we're working hard. There is a national issue regarding social workers, whether it's for children or adults. Most of those agency workers are within that social care setting. There's been obviously a combined savings target, and that is forecast to be fully delivered. There's been some slippage, which has been detailed in the medium-term financial strategy tracker, but the Directorate has mitigated against those slippage areas by extending workings on savings. And obviously, it comes as no surprise that we continue to experience cost pressures in care packages and placements. We are dealing with a private market that sets its own charges. And on top of that, there is the issue about, obviously, the discharge process from our hospital discharge funds. Central government has given us some money towards it, but as outlined in the relevant paragraphs 8, 8 and 8, 10, sorry, 8, 8 and 8, 9, we do continue to work under pressure regarding hospital discharge. And final comment from me, Chair, is obviously that I think it's important that we do emphasise at this point, 8.11, that a combination of slow recovery and customer footfall following the pandemic means that there is still some issues regarding active new and forecast deficit, and that will be funded from the current public health grant reserve. And the last one is that the area has been concerned about rough sleeping with a potential overspend of 100 million, but because of the hard work of both housing and adult social care, we have had a thorough review of our housing benefit income and review of support of accommodation expenditure. So the service there under rough sleeping is currently projecting to break even, but obviously we're closely monitoring that because of the issues surrounding the cost of living crisis.
Thank you. And Conrad, I'm going to just come back to you because I'm noting that there's no one representing children's services in the meeting officer side, but on the CYPS forecast overspend still standing at 0.7 million, are you able to just provide a brief explanation around that in the interest of transparency of the quick meeting? Yeah, of course.
So, yes, the CYPS position of 0.7 million overspent over period 9. The report, as the report describes, there are pressures on some of the volatile cost budgets, such as providing for the placements of looked after children and also the overrated, the unaccompanied asylum seekers who are over 18. There is some quirks in the system of funding that we receive from governments in that we need to sort of get above a certain threshold for the number of young people you're supporting, and make essentially the cost of that exceed some of the government grants that we get in there. Underlying all of that position as well is, and this does link back to the MTS savings, essentially a placement saving which has been in the budget for a number of years and is dedicated on making some capital investments in the provision of well, I think placements for young people, which, as reported, hasn't been achieved, hasn't come through to fruition, and that has made it more difficult to mitigate that position. I do know, as I said, that management continue to try and find further mitigations in this area. Then giving too much work to
Okay.
expect there will remain buildings, but the position has improved in the period 9.1 that you're presented with. That's just the knowledge that I'm privy to at the moment. And certainly there is, I'd like to think, a sort of robust estimate progress in terms of producing budget for children's services. One last point would be, that is a large, complex budget, in excess of 100 million. Less than £1 million.
Yeah. I appreciate that. But every penny counts. And then the final area of programme from me before I open up to questions or comments. On the combined forecast overspend for the shared and non-shared services at 1.6 million, largely as a result of ICT cost pressures. Again, in the interest of transparency in this space, could you provide an explanation?
Yeah, certainly. So the short explanation there, I think it's well acknowledged that council faces what one might call a technology deficit. So that would be a period of time. An underinvestment, both in the core systems needed to run the council business and indeed to enable more efficient transactions with residents and others, as well as an underinvestment in developing staff and capabilities within the IT function. So in order to address that, there would necessarily been some additional expenditure incurred. Again, looking ahead to the budget that is being set, that includes some significant studies in order to make sure that the council can operate in a more efficient way. Of course, we are trying elsewhere within what we do to offset of that with understanding in other areas, although that's challenging. But I'll pause at that point there and take further questions.
Okay. I think, no, that's been really helpful. May I just open up to any questions on this paper, the financial position as it stands Q3? Yep.
I was just going to say about temporary accommodation. I think it's unprecedented the amount of applications we're getting. We've currently 5,858 residents in temporary accommodation, and our figures for 21 and 22 were 4,424. It's a real supply issue, and we could see up to 1,000-1,500 more applications by the end of this financial year. January alone, we've had 500 applications for just January. So again, it's a pan-London issue, and we're really, as a borough, really trying to help support our residents. And I think the restructure of the homeless prevention service that we done almost 2 years ago is paying dividend. Again, we're doing more prevention work, but putting residents into temporary accommodation is always a last resort. Again, the acquisitions program that we put in place is going to start basically giving us more supply, but at the moment it's really critical that we continue supporting our residents at this time of need. And I think it's really good as an administration that we are putting our residents first, and we're not just solely focusing on the nightly paid accommodation. We're trying to use everything that we got in the box to deliver for our residents, including looking at empty properties, our void properties. So we are not, there's nothing that we're not doing to get our financial pressures down and support our residents in their time of need. And, I think it's really good that we're all coming together and, working together as a team, and a one council approach, like, with Neil's team, and having more wraparound support. And I think I'm going to talk about that probably later on in the budget, about what we're doing and things like that. But I think it's, it's unprecedented times. I think it's a real struggle when it's not just Neil, it's everywhere at the moment. And, I'm doing casework. I'm going into surgery nearly every week, and it's all housing. And I think my councillor colleagues here would probably be, when they're doing their surgeries, agree with me that housing is the number one issue in this borough at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shab. And just formal noting, just want to commend you, Darren Levy, and the wider housing services team, because you're very much in the eye of the storm, and it's not easy. It never has been easy. And not wanting to make too much of a point, but I think there is something profoundly concerning and unsustainable in a borough where 68% of our resident population live in the private rented sector, and where the majority of those landlords that own these properties don't have a vested interest in new and beyond generating income because they don't live in the borough. And we are an example of a very flawed housing sector in this country, and we'd always be facing a fragility in this area, robust and financially viable ways to address the challenge. Right, any other comments, colleagues? No? Okay, I'm going to just ask if you could note the recommendations are set out on big page number 22, 3.1, for the reasons set out in the report, and it's Cabinet is asked to: 1, note the report past overspend on the general fund and the management actions being taken to mitigate it. Note the MTFS savings tracker. Note the forecast positions on the DSG and HRA. 4, note the risk register, including mitigating actions. 5, note the forecast movement in reserves. And 6, note forecast capital monitoring financial position. Cabinet members only, do we note all of those? Noted.
Agreed.
That's all agreed, Joy. Thank you. Right, we are now going to be moving to. Okay, so as per my introductory remarks, an appendix was contained in the Building a Fair and New Budget Setting Report for the coming financial year, and that's a report of the Budget Working Commission, where it's as an appendix and enabling it to stand in its own right as an agenda item, which it rightly deserves, because it has been a process of engagement that the executive have had with the scrutiny, vital scrutiny process that occurs in every council. So I wanted to once again welcome Councillor Anthony McCormick to Cabinet, and I will provide you the floor to introduce your report.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, included in the paper for this item is the 2023 budget report, produced by the Budget Working Commission and adopted and submitted to Cabinet by the Committee and in Gordon Cabinet figures, these are well known to you and can be found in the overview and scrutiny report and these budget papers. Of course, our interpretation and analysis might be different, but I look back for another time and another place. The report focuses on priority areas identified by the Commission during the fourth phase of work. These are the Council's financial sustainability and resilience, housing and temporary accommodation, agency staffing, dedicated school grants, and budget proposal related to numerous parts. The Review and Scrutiny Committee made 9 recommendations proposed by the Commission, and must also resolve to establish a task and finish commission to review potential solutions to temporary accommodation of the spending. Briefly, it recommends that the Council reports more clearly its usage of reserves. Secondly, greater contribution is made to the general fund to redress the slower than anticipated return. 3, a smart action plan for homelessness response program and its intended outcomes be developed and shared with Overview and Scrutiny Committee. 4, all commitment and decisions be informed by the proper advice and assessment and involve the consideration of all implications and alternatives. 5, better data on indirectly employed staff be collected and included in the budget upgrade report. The value for money of the Council's delivering rather than commissioning the 0 to 19 service to be reviewed, and the findings shared with Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that comprehensive work project plan for the most part and all its work streams the June published before any order related budget proposal are going forward. Mayor, I would at this stage take the opportunity to thank those of you who attended budget working commission meetings and also officers in your directorate who consumed papers for the commission or attended meeting. While the report may seem negative and critical, that is the natural consequence of scrutiny of this nature and the limited time available to the commission and the report, which is good with its collectively support. I know that many support the majority of your budget, not least the reinstatement of the overnight bonds. For the investment is for our most vulnerable, as a continual commitment to pay the London living wage and to feeding all primary school children regardless of means. I, of course, am especially supportive of the much needed additional funding for Overview and Scrutiny Committee proposed in the draft budget, which I hope will be used to provide us with the powerful capacity required to keep pace with the administration ambitious agenda. Mayor, the Cabinet is asked to consider the budget scrutiny report and the recommendation contained in it. Under the Council's constitution, the executive is required to report how that take into account the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommendation at the Council budget meeting. The executive is also required by law to respond to Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommendation within 2 months of the day. I look forward to these and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be inviting Councillor Zulfiqar to respond on behalf of the executive, and just to formally note that the executive response to Budget Working Commission is being tabled at this meeting. And it will, subject to being approved by Cabinet as the definitive executive response, will continue its journey into the Yellow Book pack that will go into full council concerning the budget. May I ask either Zulfika or Conrad, has the response? It was
We have copies of a draft report available, which yours, the clerk has, which can be tabled up and circulated to all present.
okay. It's not a draft report because the email that I received from you indicated it was a final report. That was my understanding.
It is final as.
Okay. So if that could be circulated down, I'm just going to pause for a few moments, if that's okay, and give due regard to their overview and scrutiny some time to read it. So I'm going to also adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes so that he can read it. Those members of the public or press that are watching via the live stream, thank you for your patience. We just adjourned momentarily. I wanted to firstly thank Councillor Anthony McColman once again for the production and process pertaining to the drafting of this report, which myself and the rest of cabinet members and wider executive read with appreciation and with interest. As mentioned before we adjourned momentarily, there is a executive response to the report which has been taken in, and everyone will have received it. There are 9 principal areas where recommendations have been made, and we noted some of the commentary in the report pertaining to some other matters, not least rightly the interest that the Budget Working Commission has had with regards to pressures, temporary accommodations, rightly wanting to examine how we will be responding to that as part of the wider strategic housing delivery programme that has been by the council since 2018. And we also noted the reference in relation to the high needs block. I'm going to be inviting Councillor Zulfikar Ali to provide you an update with regards to the response which we provided to you in writing. And I appreciate you haven't had much time to digest thoroughly, but if you had any initial thoughts, I would be very much welcome in hearing those. But are you okay with me inviting Councillor Zulfikar Ali first to provide you a response, and then we will come back to you, and then I'll open up where appropriate to other members of the cabinet. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll echo your remarks. Thanking Councillor McMahon for being here this morning. So thanking your Budget Working Commission members for their diligence in terms of scrutinizing the budget process. Clearly, scrutiny is an important part of the democratic process that we have, and we have built a good relationship over the years, particularly through the protocol that we agreed. I'm grateful for the work that has done in terms of scrutinizing the proposals. A response has just been provided to you, and I hope you had a chance to look at those. As you will see, we're all in it to make sure to improve quality of services for our residents. We use public funds in the best possible way we can, and we provide clear and transparent justification for what we do and what we propose to do in the future. And in response to the Commissioner's recommendation, you will see by and large, we do welcome all of them. And quite clearly, as you'll see, there is a yes agreement with most of those that you have suggested. There are a few where we have said that may not be feasible in the way that's been suggested, and an explanation has been provided as to why that can't be done, and particularly what alternatives look at to some of these suggestions are incorporated in the way we move forward. And that is, I think, all I will say at this stage, Chair. But thank you for being here this morning and for your leadership of the Budget Working Party and putting this report together. Thank you.
Okay. Would it help, Zulfikar, if you just referenced some of the more pertinent recommendation responses as they pertain to you? And then what I was intending to do is invite, where appropriate, specific cabinet members to talk to their response to recommendations as relevant to their service areas. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to do that, Chair.
Only because we're in a public forum and I would like to get it surfaced.
In terms of recommendation 1, Chair, which we tend to next year and how we should proceed in terms of moving things forward, that is clearly something that we welcome, and we've agreed. Said that a detailed information about the reserves will be included in the quarterly budget reports. And we have also stated that there is cabinet accountability model, which holds the cabinet members by mayor and the chief executive. And the quarterly reports will be presented, and in next one is due in July as part of the financial review this year. The second one recommendation is regarding the £5 million to be contributed to general fund reserves to close the gap. We have said that really we have a commitment to add £3 million to the reserves, general fund reserves every year until we reach the 5% mark. And this year, as you recall, in December draft proposals, we gave a commitment of 3 million. However, since the local government financial settlement announcement, revenues we are happy to add another 1 million to that. So it means that next year we're planning to put 4 million, but the commitment to add further 3 million remains until we reach the minimum threshold specified and advised. However, we're putting resources in a contingency. As you appreciate, any rainy days or unforeseen eventualities, the first point of call will be contingency and then general fund reserves. What we are suggesting here is clearly we want to do everything we can to make sure we reach that threshold as quickly as we can. By putting additional resources in contingency, if there is an underspend, and that underspend will be used to be transferred to general funds during the year. That's the situation that we have explained. But in order to meet the 5 million threshold as by working party, it will mean that we will need to look at the proposed savings and the growth element. But clearly, those are linked with the manifesto commitment and corporate priorities. And to do that at this stage will not be a constructive way to actually deal with the issue. At the same time, I would like to add that our Section 151 officer, who is the ultimate kind of decision maker in that regard with respect to how we should set the budget, and I'm fairly confident that he has indicated at various forums that he is happy with the proposed methodology that's been suggested. For a lengthy answer there. Number 3, this is general fund overspend is expected to be met. This is the current year's spend. And should we look at net saving to redirect this to reserves? Technically, I mean, I think what we're saying here is that overspend will not be charged to the general fund reserves, because we're looking at other ways to reduce those, and that is looking at reducing the overspend. Inflation is going down, and clearly there are earmark reserves that we could use repurpose if need be. So the answer really is that there will be no impact on the next year's general fund reserves because of any overspend that may remain this year. The next one is homeless. I'll leave that to Shaban. Number 4. And question 5, in terms of decisions with the financial implications, should be informed by professional assessment advice. Clearly, that's something we are always endeavoring to do, and there is always continuity and continuous improvements to see how best we can do that. And we've done that through internal control mechanisms that we implemented the last 4 years of the administration work. And that's something that we do welcome, and I can assure you that we will continue to do everything we can to make sure that there is open transparency and full accountability in that regard. Agency staff, again, this is you have rightly raised the concern, and the cabinet has also been very cautious of that. And as I said earlier, this is something that we are looking to drive down to ensure that we have issues that we can have permanently. But there are areas where it is difficult to recruit professional staff, and there are pressures in certain areas for which we do need agency staff. But I do take your point, and certainly the information you requested in terms of indirect employment will also be included as part of the future. The councillorship fees were target for indirectly, but yes, I mean I've already dealt with that one as well. And the value for money for the council delivered note to 19. I'll leave that to Josh as well. Yeah, and the full costing program for the Spark project, I'll leave that for the mayor to answer. So if I could ask Shab to deal with the recommendation 4.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say, we've set up a homeless response project team, and the main thing is that for a long time, councils have been relying on private PRS landlords, and at the end of the day, it's always caused issues with our overspends, and it's a reliance. Obviously, the cost of living crisis is a factor in this, and the homeless response program is about us as a council acquiring, using the acquisitions, using funding streams that we can buy our own. So what we want to try and do is have our own supply and draw down on reliance on landlords. And again, it's about lifting up standards. Also, it's looking at land in the borough that we've got small sites, how we maximise the use of our small sites, using modular housing if we have to on those sites. Also, but using voids in our regeneration areas, trying to maximise as many empty properties in the borough, really drive costs down. The other thing is, we restructured the homeless prevention service. The main aim of that is we want to prevent homelessness. So how do we do it? And it's again, prevention and then intervention. And I think that pays dividend as well. And we want to improve the service as well. So we're looking at things like the wraparound support, or if we've got residents that have been in hotels, or tenancy sustainment. So this is really crucial pieces of work that we have to do. The other thing is, domestic abuse. What we want to try and do is also get our officers DAHA accredited, so we can recognise domestic abuse victims and support them as much as possible, especially when they're in temporary accommodation, when at their most need. So again, it's this long-term vision that we're putting everything in place, because I can't keep overspending, and we have to draw a line on how we deliver, and it's about our residents. At the end of the day, we've got large numbers of residents coming to us, homeless need. And at the end of the day, we have to provide that, and making sure that we as a council are supporting our residents in their time of need. And the other thing is, working with health colleagues in education as well. So, trying to have a one response council approach. Also, how we collect data, using maximised data to our advantage. And, this is this long-term vision, it will pay dividend and start reducing the financial pressure that we do have in housing services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to add, and then I'll come to the 0 to 19 years service. And Councillor McCormick, you may not have been in the chamber at the time that we were discussing a related point on the pressures of temporary accommodation, just to assure you that it is something that is under constant scrutiny and challenge as part of our cabinet accountability model we have in place, that myself and the chief executive convene with regards to ensuring that the pressures that temporary accommodation are presented are both addressed, but also viewed through the significant and significance of the wider housing approach that we're taking in this borough, and we welcome your challenge and probing of this very important area. One other thing that we did say prior to you entering the chamber is, this is not unique to Newham. It is reflective of a London-wide picture, albeit Newham, in light of the characteristics of Newham and the pressures that we face in the context of a very expansive private rented sector, where majority of our residents live in the private rented sector, and hence are at most risk because they're exposed to being made homeless at a greater scale, is something that also should be noted. So there are some structural issues that are beyond the control of the council, but that's not to say that Shabs and the service area, and indeed the entirety of the cabinet and the executive and the organisation are blind to that. On the 0 to 19 years service, you'll note the response to that recommendation 8, and a review is underway. And the findings, in addition to being shared with cabinet and the wider executive, we would welcome overview and scrutiny meeting those. And then you'll note the response to recommendation 9. And you'll note that it is a no in terms of the recommendation set out, albeit I do want to draw your attention to the last paragraph on page 6 of our response to that the Arts Data Campus will emerge in this very building that we're sat in, will be subject to further cabinet approval. The feasibility phase has been concluded, and that, of course, is open for overview and scrutiny to examine as part of their vital and valued scrutiny function, and happy to ensure that there's engagement ongoing with yourself in your role as chair in this matter and area. So I trust that that is fine and satisfactory for now. Just wanted to bring in Councillor Russell Garfield on the high needs block, because there was a section in your report recommendation. Just felt it was important for us to just reassure you on that front.
Yes, of course, Mayor Fiaz. So we had a conversation, of course, Councillor McCormick with scrutiny at budget working party in regards to the high needs deficit. This is not necessarily solely a localised problem. Every local authority in the country almost every local authority is in deficit with their high needs block function. As a response to this, to prevent local authorities up and down the UK having to shift that deficit into general fund and therefore risk insolvency, the government has set up a ring fence scheme which ends in 3 years' time, and this allows us to deal with the deficit in isolation and have it not affect general fund. We do have plans, and we're working on a 5-year high needs management plan to ensure that we can balance our position and recover that deficit. It does mean 3 years' time that scheme ends. There's every chance it will be extended, but we are taking the decision as a department to not rely on its extension. We have a far lower deficit than some local authorities in the country who we think are in no position to make the same level of recovery in that time period. So one can lend oneself to assume the government will extend it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to spend the next 5 years recovering the deficit and avoid the risk that it gets shifted into general fund. That will mean clawing back some of that funding from our partners and stakeholders in the borough, but we have alerted them to this, and they know that we're going to be looking to claw back £6 million a year for the next 3 years. And we had that conversation with Budget Working Party, and they were satisfied with the strategy.
Thank you very much. And just finally, Councillor Neil Wilson, in relation to the recommendation 8 that I spoke to, the pressures that it's presenting on the public health front, I'd like to add to what I set out.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I mean, both Councillor Ruiz and I had only in the last week, and this before we saw sight of your recommendation, an officer meeting where we were both briefed. Clearly, this is a large expenditure in the public health grant, as you know, and there is a review underway, which all three of us, that's the mayor with overall responsibility, clearly, but Councillor Ruiz and I will be carefully examining that review to make the best model which fits both families' needs and to achieve best value. We're very clear that there has been some incorporated issues when we brought the service back in-house. It's a very unusual model, as you know, Councillor McCormick, have this service provided by local authority, but to reassure Budget Working Commission and those watching, it is the case that our public health team are using external evaluation chair, and I think that reassurance will give us some hope to move this service to a more sustainable position. But it has been quite a convoluted process to actually get transparency in some regards to funding. We are very clear that this recommendation is helpful, actually, and it will be referred back, obviously, to share with the executive colleagues as soon as that review has taken place, to make certain that we'll have a firm report that overview and scrutiny can also participate in. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that just concludes the response to the report commission that you presented to Councillor McCormick, and I trust that that's been helpful. But welcome for you to say some commentary on that. And
thanks, Mayor, for Cabinet for your response, and I note your support for our report, and I also note that you've accepted the majority of our recommendation and look forward for those being implemented. However, because I have only a sight of this paper today, and as you would appreciate, the budget scrutiny process is a collective one. I am one of the co-chairs of that process, and we have the overview, who is the commissioning committee of the budget committee. It's only right and proper that I take this back for a detailed response from my colleagues who I know would have some things to say, especially with recommendation 2 and recommendation 3 and recommendation 9, which was said no to, because those are some of the areas that we exercise and some of our attention. So it is right and proper, but I get the buy-in into this. We gave a proper response to this. However, having said that, I would comment briefly on recommendation 2, which you said no to. And we are concerned as a committee, and it's our place to be concerned that the reserve position, the general fund reserve position, as it is now, is worrying. And I appreciate that you haven't overspent. You'll be looking to take that money from another place, which is the earmark reserve. But the Budget Commission feels that we should be replenishing the reserve position faster than we're proposing to do. On the back of COVID came the cost of living crisis, and we don't know what is down the road. And we touch with that, there's nothing of the sort. But if something like that should occur, again, we are in a very difficult position. And therefore, one of the areas that we would recommend is that we look at policy growth. For instance, in a time of crisis, we believe, and it's nice to do certain things, and nice to do things is always good, but then we should focus on the essential rather than the nice to do. And policy growth is one of those areas that we believe we can look at, flowing back some of that money and putting it into the reserve. Agency staffing. I suppose I'm pushing at an open door when I talk about agency staffing. It's out of control, it's above what it should be, and we should be focusing on that. And those are areas in which we can look carefully, address, and have some money. And I know the cabinet member for finance, Councillor Ali, you mentioned you'll be putting money into contingency. And what would be helpful if you said how much you'll be putting into contingency. So I can have some kind of understanding here, and the general public, how much would be put into contingency to offset any unforeseen circumstances like the cost of living, like the COVID pandemic, etc. I note that the money for recommendation 3 is not coming from the general fund reserve, which is a sensible thing to do. You would have dictated it is now. However, it will be coming from the earmark reserve, and that is one of the things that Budget Working Commission had concerns about, because we are depleting the earmark reserve even further. So as I see it, it's a run of the earmark reserve. So that's again, that is why I need to take this back for their considered view on that. In terms of recommendation 4 and the temporary accommodation issue, Shabs, I hear everything that you said. That is why we're going to be setting up a task and finish commission to look at the temporary accommodation issue, and our scrutiny can contribute to the wide executive work that you're doing in tackling the temporary accommodation. We mentioned 5,000 plus we have in temporary accommodation. That is a lot. Yeah. And I note also that the majority of those spend 5-point-something million is for temporary accommodation. That's not sustainable. And that's why we are going to be setting up the task and finish commission to be looking how this can be addressed. And the last but not least, in terms of me commenting, is the recommendation 9, and that's the minimum swap. Budget Commission has great concern about this project. And I am slightly disappointed that you say no to this. But I note, Mayor, in your last paragraph, you said that it will be going to cabinet before any further money or capital drawdown, it will be approved by cabinet. You alluded to scrutiny involvement. Scrutiny involvement, I believe, in the form of scrutiny. I would welcome you having some form of pre-decision scrutiny, and this would be a better involvement than informing us of what has been happening. Pre-decision scrutiny is different, as you understand the nature of it. So I would welcome pre-decision scrutiny, and this so that we can work together to make certain that we are not putting money or committing the council into a project that may not be visible. I know you're doing it for the right reasons, but we're just concerned about the spend and the lack of a business case, or at least we have a sight of a business case. I use the word the lack of a business case for this. So I would end there, and I will consult with the commission an overview, and we would then give a more detailed response to this. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Before we move on, because there are 2 principal recommendations that I just need to get agreement on from Cabinet. Firstly, Sulphika, would you ensure that through the executive scrutiny engagement arrangements, i.e. with Carrie Whelan, that a communication is sent on your behalf, on your behalf and on behalf of the wider executive, that this the executive response is sent formally to the chair of overview and scrutiny, so that you've got that in order to circulate to your colleagues, and for that to be done as soon as practical this morning, before 12 o'clock if all possible. Harry will be around. And then I just wanted to clarify something from the monitoring officer, if you could kindly advise. In terms of the Budget Working Commission scrutiny process, as I understand it, they've presented their report. We've provided them a response, and for the purposes of whatever approvals noting we need to formally make today, it will then go on to full council and will be part of the yellow book, i.e. the overview and scrutiny report. Incidentally, there's just one typo. It says February 2022 on your front cover, and I'm assuming it's meant to read 6th of February 2023 on big page number 56.
I have seen that straight, yes,
Yeah.
it is a typo.
Corrected
Oh, that-
yellow book. Is the further coming back to the executive with a considered response on our response, is that outside of that
Yeah,
yellow book process? I just want all of us to be clear.
absolutely, Chair. The time is of the essence now because the papers for council go out tomorrow to meet the statutory deadline. So the responsibility of the executive in accordance with the budget policy framework is for the executive to consider the response of the budget working group, which it is doing now, to give a response, which it has done, and then to formulate the report from the executive, which Conrad is finalised and send out tomorrow. So to the extent that the response is taken into account, Conrad will do that in the report, and that will formulate and propose to the council the budget in relation to that. If there are any further amendments to those proposals, they would need to be done at council.
Sorry, that wasn't the question I was asking. My question was, this is a substantive
Yeah.
response on part of the executive to a series of recommendations made by Budget Working Committee.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the chair will want to go through his own process with Budget Working Commission and indeed Overview and Scrutiny Commission members, including his co-chair,
Yeah.
on the executive response. But the executive response is the executive response,
That's right.
which will be in the yellow book. And any Overview and Scrutiny or Budget Working Commission response to our substantive response is outside of the
That's
yellow
right.
book
That's right.
process. Yeah?
Yes, that's right. And we would ensure that it goes to carry or circulating to the members.
Okay, so if that could also be made clear as part of governance around this, I just want to ensure that everyone's clear around the process, because as far as I'm aware, but I'm happy to be corrected if I've misunderstood, the work of the Budget Working Commission has now in essence concluded, because it's did its report to Overview and Scrutiny. Overview and Scrutiny in its role has approved and received the Budget Working Commission report, and we're now responding to that report. Yeah, does that
Yes,
make
that's right.
sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Forgive me, Chair.
yeah, I will just take Councillor Zulfikar Ali and then I'll bring you back.
It's just Councillor McNamara asked for the contingency, just to say that the total contingency for next year will be 6 million, as per second point 4. What states that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I only had sight of this. If we were given, or I was given this paper before now, and to consider your response, then I would have been in a better position to respond in more detail. As I said before, it's a collective process. I am one of 2 chairs, and we have at least the scrutiny chair forum to look into this. So I looked at this paper that you provided, but without consultation with my colleague, my response is limited, which I did say in the beginning, because especially in recommendation 9 and recommendation 2, where I know budget commission spent a lot of time on. And because I hadn't had the luxury of time to consider this, I couldn't come here this morning with the view of the commission as a whole, know what their take is. So what I'm giving you is what my take is and what I know. I'm not speaking for them at all, but what I know the feelings of the commission is. So, and that is why. So why is it might be, and I understand what you're saying, it might be outside the process. I would beg for some latitude, but your indulgence, because we were only solved with this. I was only solved with this morning. Yeah.
I totally appreciate that, Chair of Budget Working Commission. Councillor McColman, and that, you know, there's no unappreciation of that fact. You received this morning. My comments and query were around procedural and process matters. So you have absolutely every right to speak to whichever member of scrutiny in whatever forum or commission with regards to our executive response. My understanding is ordinarily we will receive a scrutiny report, and we are required statutorily, if that's the right pronunciation, to provide an executive response within, well, by 2 months. And in this instance, we've provided a response this morning, having only received it at the point of the papers being published at Cabinet, because I didn't receive it directly as the Mayor, neither did Councillor Zulfikar Ali receive it directly from yourself or the other co-chair or via scrutiny, but that's a side point, and it happens. But when we do provide a response to a scrutiny report that comes to the executive in that 2-month timeframe, albeit in this instance, it's been shorter because we want to be adhering to a yellow book financial report process that's going to become to full council. Once that executive response has been sent back, that in essence is the end of the process procedurally. It doesn't preclude ongoing discussions relating to these matters in the appropriate forums of overview and scrutiny, be that the main overview and scrutiny committee or the commissions. That's my understanding. Could someone clarify? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's helpful, then perhaps I can just sort of emphasise and add to the advice that's been given by the monitoring officer. Clearly, as has been said, the legal position is the Budget Working Commission on behalf of Overview and Scrutiny provide a report. The executive has considered it, done so today in some detail, and there was a response that will therefore go to Cabinet. That fulfills the sort of formal and procedural and legal obligation that Cabinet, that the executive has considered the recommendations for Overview and Scrutiny. Of course, exactly as you just set out, Chair, the process of ongoing scrutiny does not end. And of course, it is open to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to continue to examine the matter. Many of the recommendations, for example, are things that will be implemented over a period of months in any event. And so I think that's one course of action, and indeed the standard one adopted across local authorities, in my experience, is that the executive response would be published. There wouldn't be a sort of further process for response to the response and a response to response and so on. But there would be the ongoing and healthy process of scrutiny to examine, for example, whether recommendations had successfully been implemented or consequence where the executive hasn't quite agreed with some of the recommendations. And all of that is by officers. If I could just add 2 other minor points, if I may, just with apologies. As we've been speaking, I have noticed one of the very, very minor grammatical typos in the response. So with apologies, we'll correct those before finalising it. The other thing I should say, just as we are on the record here, Councillor McCormick, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, referenced their concerns over agency staffing numbers. Give you the facts on that. Current levels of agency staffing at 14.3% are slightly above London average of 13%. That was an issue of concern, but just to be assured that they are only slightly above that London average.
Okay. That helped clarify, and I absolutely want to be emphatic that we welcome the. And we're providing process a response, and we're very much looking forward to engaging with scrutiny process, again, either via overview and scrutiny or through the commissions on each of those areas where, you know, the executive's position in a admittedly quite rigid and template that offers yes or no, doesn't allow for nuance, way that's helped, you know, in a way that's in line with how we like to engage with scrutiny. We're more than happy, as always, engage with scrutiny on any matter that we're contending with in the interests of Newham residents.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear what you said. I also hear what the section 151 officials have said, and especially in terms of response to response. So I will leave it here, Mayor. The first, while the formal bit might be concluded, we still have the ongoing process of scrutiny that was mentioned. And we will, once we look at that, still engage with the executive in making certain that we contribute to the better outcome for the residents of Newham through the scrutiny process.
And that goes without saying, because scrutiny is a really vital and important part of the administration and council ecosystem, and we always both pre-decision making and as part of ensuring that collectively all of us do right for Newham residents. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, by way of conclusion, I need to ask you to note the following, and then I will be seeking agreement. And Joy, could you kindly note the following words? So we've received the Budget Working Commission scrutiny report. It's currently listed on big page number 563 of the substantive Building Affair Newham budget report, but it's going to be extracted as an agenda item in its own right. And you'll have also received the executive response, covers pages 1 to 6. And the determination on both reports are as follows. The Mayor and Cabinet are recommended to 1, note the Budget Working Commission report, which will be presented to members at full council later in February. And 2, agree the executive response. So it's a note and an agree. Yeah. Have you got that, Joy? Super. So do we note and agree?
Yeah.
Noted, agreed.
Great.
That's approved, noted, agreed. Okay, right. Now, thank you so much, Councillor McCormick. And you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of Cabinet, not least we're jumping onto the budget setting report. So this is our Building Affair in Newham 2023-2024 budget setting report. I'm going to be invited Councillor Zulfi and finance officers, including the brilliant 151 officer. I'm going to make him red. But can I just, before he jumps into your introduction, just wish to put on record my thanks and appreciation to all corporate directors and cabinet members alongside senior officers in their contribution to what has been a very exacting and tough process, not least because of the context that as a council, as with all local authorities, face in this present period with the cost of living crisis, inflationary pressure, service demands, as a consequence of population growth and the requirements around children's services and adult social care. And in particular, I wanted to pay a special tribute to Councillor Zulfikar Ali for your sterling commanding of this particularly tough ship. Is that the right analogy? I'm sure it's not. And someone's going to correct me.
Mixed metaphor.
I do it all the time. I've done it all the time, but it provokes much hilarity. So thank you for that, Zulfikar, but also to Comrade Andrew Hall and also to Nick, who's worked really hard. And if that could be noted, and I do think they deserve it.
Thank you, Chair, and can I echo your brilliant remarks about appreciation of the hard work of the cabinet colleagues and Chief Executive and Director of Finance and Assistant Director, and indeed the rest of the corporate management team and the whole staff, because I think it's only through them that we can demonstrate success of any big change that which this is actually proposing. That on the 20th of December, we agreed a draft budget, which was ahead of the government's announcement of local government financial settlement. We did this because we wanted to engage and share our proposals with our communities and residents and the local businesses, etc. We did that. We always strive to improve our services, and administration's priorities is to make sure that we are building a fairer NUM. And may I also say that this budget is also delivering our commitment to the first green budget. As you said, Chair, there'll be many challenges, and there'll be many so significant challenges, but we have taken upon us as administration to take full responsibility and recognize the needs of our community. And we focus on delivering our promises, and the promises that we made when we were elected back in May 2018 as part of our manifesto commitment. Our people deserve clean, safe, and healthy place to live and work. And that is what this administration is trying to do, budget process. As you referred to, Chair, we have suffered austerities, the government cuts, in fact, a 60% reduction in real terms in central government finance. These have all added to the difficulties that we are facing. But we are continually facing additional challenges. We had COVID, we heard earlier. We now have the cost of living crisis, the highest inflation in 40 years, rising interest rates, energy costs, etc. These are all having impact on our community. In addition, we've had a 14% increase in our population, which unfortunately has failed to recognize. We are a borough with inner London characteristics, have changing demographic characteristics as well. Yet we are still treated as an outer London borough in terms of the way the funding formula works. We are very diverse borough. We're proud of that, but obviously we do need to make sure that we have sufficient resources to deal with those difficult challenges that we face. 2/3 of our funding, as we all know, comes from central government, and which failed to recognize the difficulties I described earlier, and the diversity and the demographic changes and the growth that we had in the borough. And again, 2/3 of our funding, the total budget goes to adult social care and children's services, and quite rightly so, because we have a responsibility to protect our vulnerable residents. So these challenges do need a robust plan to ensure we deliver services that support our residents. And if I can say that over the last 5 years, this administration has put in place robust internal controls, financial management systems, performance management systems, which are showing results to show that we are delivering our budget in a better way. We have budgeted 327 million last year. We are increasing it to 360 million. We could have simply said, okay, we'll simply protect the services and not invest in enhancements or service delivery improvements. But we've chosen a path which protects and supports our services as well as delivering our manifesto commitments. These are not easy choices. They are difficult choices. But we are, the mayor, the cabinet, and the corporate director, and the rest of the staff, to delivering those priorities on behalf of the residents that we are here to serve. Our preferences and our priorities and thinking has been about savings and growth. And that's where the focus is. The savings, which have little impact on our residents, and the growth items that deliver our manifesto commitments and aspirations and the needs of local residents. And we remain committed to deliver those priorities because we want to continue to be a council that is welcoming, that's inclusive, and that's efficient. We want to build a thriving and resilient communities. We want to support the delivery of good quality and affordable homes, you've heard earlier. There are many challenges. And I said already, we have a solid financial base we have. We have the lowest council tax in London, and we are one of the lowest, we're lowest in East London, but one of the lowest in London. And we have supported our residents through cost of living crisis. Our council tax scheme, up to January this year, 28,000 people who were eligible to get 90% relief from the council tax. That is something that we are proud of. We're again proud of the 6 million that we've been investing for many years into Eat for Free, which saves £500 per family, per child every year. And the cost of living, the London living wage, we are supporting our care. That scheme, has been delivering support for our local residents. We have heard already about homelessness and the temporary accommodation. Again, this is the statutory responsibility we have, but our demands have increased. Supply from market property is reducing, rents is increasing. So the pressures on us is increasing, but we want our people to be dealt with respectfully, with dignity, because everyone here deserves that. This is our first green budget. We're putting £69 million in capital investments in green transport and sustainable transport and environmental initiative. We continue to work to manage our energy better, trying to bring our properties to EPCC rating by 2025, building new homes with better standards. There's an ongoing program of electric vehicle charging points. We've introduced 40 new electric vans into our fleet. There's an ongoing fleet replacement program, which will deliver that for better cost effectiveness. And we are replacing LED with the LED lighting across the council building. There's a lot more which we are adding to as part of our climate change agenda to make sure that all our operations are net zero by 2030, and the whole borough is net zero by 2045. Based on the work we've done, we seem to have delivered nearly 6% reduction in the CO2 level in this plan. That plan will continue. We're investing in the Spark project. We had discussion on that. This is a manifesto commitment that delivers benefit for increasing access to council services. It will deliver increased employment opportunities for people, and it will enable future services delivery to be planned based on intelligent data sets, which will see improvements and lead to greater efficiency, cost effectiveness, and better value and greater satisfaction of residents. Because we want to be in a position where we want a future that enables us to digitally be capable to take advantage of new opportunities, because we have a duty that we owe to our residents, young generation particularly. So in terms of this budget, Chair, as I said, we're increasing this service budget by 60 million. And that includes 27 million to meet the rising costs of delivering the services that we currently provide. There's 7 million investment in delivering corporate delivery plan. That is part of the building fair renewal. There's 24 million growth to meet the rising demand. For example, 4 million of it is going into children and young people services, a social care budget to help the most vulnerable, such as care leavers. There's £4 million going into housing services. You heard already the TA pressure that we are facing. We are making sufficient provision in the budget next year to tackle the big challenge, in addition to the work we are doing to reduce the pressure in that area, which Councillor Shaban Mohammed has already highlighted. We're finding ways through delivering value for money services. We have found 90 million of savings. Those savings are through efficient information, and they are the one, as I said earlier, with the least impact in service delivery. But we have got to find sufficient funding because the government hasn't given us what we need to deliver the priorities we have and we said to our residents we will do. So the budget proposal also includes an increase in council tax of 4.99%, including 2% of adult social care precept. And that is the limit the government has legislated, enabling local authorities to increase that. My own information is that most local authorities will take up that opportunity because frankly, they won't have a choice. But if they didn't, next year, well, the government will say, don't bother coming to us because you had the option to do that and you didn't do it. Again, the government is passing the buck and putting the burden on poor local authorities. We recognize that that will obviously have some impact on residents. But just to quantify, in terms of Band D property, it will lead to an increase of £1.09 per week. But as I said earlier, that will still enable us to continue to remain to be one of the lowest authority in London. And at the same time, we are retaining the council tax reduction scheme, which will benefit people who are eligible for up to 90% relief in that area. Similarly, the budget proposes a 7% increase in council rents. And again, this is as legislated by the government. And the impact of that is going to be £8.71 for a typical 3-bedroom property. As I said earlier, the inflation is currently running at 10-11% in double figures. So that increase is still below inflation, but it safeguards the services and the provision that we do provide for our tenants. At the same time, that we have a massive capital program to improve our housing stock in order to make sure the more energy efficient, tackling cladding issues, and there are other major projects that are taking place in that area. We continue to build on general fund reserves. You know, you heard earlier that we had to take money out of reserves to pay for COVID because the government said spend, 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 but they did not reimburse us. Had to use the reserves to do that, but we are committed. And as I said in the December report, we were going to be putting 3 million a year until we reach the 5% level. However, things have changed since December, and now we are now in a position to add another £1 million to the reserves. So there will be a total of 4 million going into that budget next year, and we will retain that commitment to increase those as we go along until we reach the 5% level. In addition, there are 6 million contingency funds. And as I said earlier, if there is any underspend in the contingency budget, then we will transfer that to the general fund reserve, and that's an option that we retain. I'm sure my colleagues would like to talk about, respective areas as to what we're doing in different areas. We have listened to the residents. People wanted, antisocial behavior issues and now nuisance issues to be dealt with faster. People wanted cleaner streets. So there's more investment going into those areas. We've got 2 billion investment in housing because we have a 1,500 manifesto commitment for new affordable rental homes. And that is what we're delivering. There's 3.2 million growth in adult social care budget to meet the needs of the vulnerable people. We're putting 2.6 million in street cleansing, waste, parks, and road maintenance. So, Cabinet colleagues, our budget proposal today continue our record of providing good services in a cost-effective manner. Despite the many challenges we continually face, we are protecting our services, we are enhancing our services, we're investing in growth, and we are supporting our residents and our communities. And we are investing ambitiously for the future. And I recommend this budget to you. I'll ask Conrad Holt to see if he wants to add anything.
Thank you. Conrad, please.
Chair, if I may, firstly, just on behalf of all of the officers of the council, thank you for the very generous thanks that you gave. A budget, of course, is the financial plan, and principally the discussion on this should be around the policy and political choices in that. That's how democracy functions. So I will confine myself just to a few brief words. As you know, I'm the council's statutory chief finance officer, and am therefore required under section 25 of the 2020 Equipment Act, comment on the robustness of the estimates in the budget and the adequacy of the proposed reserves. And that statement appears at section 15 of the report that you have. And in that I set out the council's reserves, as it's been discussed in some detail. Those are currently low, all the reviews are understood, But this should not be seen solely as a static position. The budget includes contributions of £4 million next year into those reserves, increase in draft budget presented in December, and a total contribution of £10 million over the next 3 years, all of which is hardwired, if you like, in financial plans, and should over that period of time, therefore, see reserve return to that benchmark. Of course, it is possible to adopt a even faster approach to increasing reserves, but to do that, further savings be identified as budget sets out. Table 2, which appears just before paragraph 4.7, nearly £20 million, £19.4 million of savings, and as Councillor Ali sets out, through the extensive public consultation process that we've carried out, these savings are not ones that will impact significantly on frontline services. So there's already a considerable contribution towards efficiency and, in my view, a sensible and prudent balance struck on the way to rebuild reserves. My statement also sets out comments on the robustness of the estimates in the budget, particularly, for example, unlikely pay settlements, inflation, which, although starting to come down slightly, is still much higher than has been the case for many years. Additional allowances for the cost of the growing population, as Councillor Ali sets out, is not, in our view, properly reflected in government funding settlements, and indeed additional money to fund some of the known financial pressures that we face. It's therefore my view, as set out in that statement, that the budget proposed is reasonable and prudent and meets the required tests set out in section 25 of that 2003. I won't make any comments beyond that. Colleague Andrew Ward, just for the benefit of people watching, if that's all right, I will just talk those viewing through the many appendices in the report, and then we'll open it up to the discussion. If that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks also for your kind words and stuff. I'll just say a few words about the appendices. You heard just now from around here about the section 25 statements, and that's part of in this budget setting, but there are a number of other appendices which I think also add, for example, the statement from the monitoring officer, pay policy statement, the detailed information on our fees and charges, for example, and also there's an interim report there about the budget engagement sessions and extensive budget engagement that took place throughout January. Other appendices are there to really provide detailed information, not just on the savings and growth proposals, but there's also an appendix on public health grants, on capital and the HRA, and not least the approach being taken by the council with regard to green budgeting. So there's a lot there, and I just want to record my thanks to the finance service for helping put it all together with the directorate and departmental management teams as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to be inviting cabinet colleagues to just talk to elements of the budget proposals as set out, so that we can draw attention, given that this is a public forum. And if I can invite Neil Wilson to say a few words. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So, Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care. Page 92 rightly highlights that the building of Fair Newham, the policy programme that this administration stood on, which is now transmogrified into the corporate plan, we are building on the Healthier Newham and Ageing Well strategies by putting in 3.2 million growth into the adult social care budget to meet the needs of our changing population, a population that is growing older, but we hope growing well, aging well, but obviously having a considerable effect on budgetary pressures. And as my colleagues have already, Councillor Ali has already stated, the continuation of a London living wage policy, because the caring sector, whether it's for children or adults, has often been poorly paid, predominantly a female workforce. Currently, this administration believes, together with other colleagues in our political party, that women should be rightly rewarded, and all workers within this sector. So we're continuing to do that. That is the growth items also that are indicated on the relevant pages that Andrew has already referred to. The growth paragraph for detailed inspection is on page I've got this right, yes, page 136. Clearly, we've got demographic growth. This borough will be the largest by the next census of the London boroughs. We've got a population that's growing older, therefore with more multiple, often with more multiple conditions in their health. And the demographic growth that is alluded to is catered for by the 3.2 that I've already mentioned on page 136, 137. We then have the other commitment on the next page, 138, 139, for the London living wage. This budget has to be seen, of course, obviously in terms of a medium-term financial strategy. And on the pages beginning on page 272 of the main bundle are obviously, which has been discussed at the December Cabinet, promoting independence reviews, etc., in terms of our service transformation, a very important issue for this directorate that I'm the cabinet lead for. In terms of service transformation, we do need to stress that this is not at the expense of our residents. It is in terms of making more efficient use of our services, more tailored, more personalised to the individual needs. So it's been a relatively straightforward progression from what was already under service transformation under the previous 2 or 3 years that this programme has been adopted. It does continue until service transformation items on page 272, 7289. A lot of it is about service transformation, and there is just one other thing that we do need to actually make reference to, and I think it would be remiss of me not to. I've said here and in other places that the treatment of adult social care has not been helped by central government, again, putting reforms into what is rather standardised format now of into the long grass. That is not very helpful. This borough has been one of the trailblazers, and we are learning from that experience, but it would be helpful if central government actually made certain that there were proper reforms. The budget does allude to the proposed fair cost of care. As soon as the genie is out of the bottle, private sector providers will go on to a increasing pressure on our budgets. I've already made allusions in my previous comment, Chair, to the very real issue of how we're dealing with a privatised carers market. And as soon as you have that, there'll be pressures on the budget. But I think we've been both, to use a phrase that is common parlance, prudent within our financial management, and it is about terms of the only income generation, including fees and charges, will be about the review of the local cap on care. Most of our budget has been to be a more personalised, strength-based approach based upon real implementation of a personalised agenda. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you very much. I'm going to talk to some of the key elements of the budget that we have before us, relating to the inclusive economy agenda that we've been driving forward since 2018. And I want to start firstly by saying this. We're an administration that is bold, that is courageous, that doesn't shy away from the hard challenges that we face as a council and the hard challenges that our people face. And we are an administration that's not satisfied in tinkering on elements of lifting people out of poverty and transforming their condition. We're an administration that is intent in transforming lives. And that's the reason why we have anchored everything that we do since May 2018, the fundamental agenda of inclusive economy, inclusive growth, community wealth building, responding to the climate emergency, and ensuring that we maintain a significant turbocharged drive against poverty. It's particularly important, what we've all experienced over the past 3.5 years plus, against the backdrop of austerity, which has diminished our ability to power through the challenges that our residents face, be it in confronting the crisis in housing, and we've heard a lot about that earlier, and we will hear a lot about that in a short while from Councillor Shaban. Austerity has really hurt us hard and hurt our communities for 12 years. And if the current government continues on its trajectory, the period 2024-25 onwards will be even more challenging for not only us, not only our households, not only our communities, but for the entirety of the country and local government. And that's why, along with colleagues here, that's political colleagues, not officer colleagues, of course, we are campaigning for change in government, and a Labour government will deliver for the people of this country in ways that we're doing locally. We are advancing a fairer agenda. We're advancing a greener agenda here in Newham in ways that couldn't even be conceived before May 2018. And in the inclusive economy element of this budget, we will continue doing precisely that in these hard times in supporting our residents. Principal features as detailed in the report, but highlighted in particular on big page number 93, is the Household Support Fund, including £250,000 to continue to help our families with food and energy costs, and highlighting the announcement around the energy cap in April. It comes at such a vital time. We have continued our promise to the children and young people of this borough through an ongoing investment of £6 million each year that allows for every single primary school kid to access a warm, nutritious meal every single day that they are at primary school. And we are one of 4 local authorities in the capital that have this in place, and we've had it in place for a long time. And then I do want to talk about the £1.2 million of capital investment in the Newham Sparks programme. Part of that will be going to accelerating the council's proficiency in all things digital and data, so that we are able to leverage that to become an optimal organisation that we have embraced, stated very clearly 4.9 months ago that this was our intent, because we've got to turbocharge the organisation so that it's fit for purpose for the 21st century. In the previous paper, you know, we heard from the Section 151 officer that some of the oversights in finance and resources, one source related to ICT, because we've got systems that literally are the equivalent of the 16th century. And that is astonishing at this juncture of the 21st century, given the advances in technology, but also this is a budget that unashamedly sets out important elements of investment for growth. And that's precisely what Newham Sparks Data Campus is about. It's about future-proofing this borough and ensuring that there is ongoing opportunity for our residents who are diverse, who are amongst, the best educated. If you look at the results of our children, young people coming out of school, coming out of FE and entering into the higher education sector, we've got an ecosystem of innovation that already exists in this borough, be it in the Innovation District, in the Olympic Park, be it what's emerging on the Lower Lee Valley with the prospects subject to planning approval of a data centre that will be able to heat all households within a 1.5 kilometre radius of that site on Bidder Street, with all the work that's emerging in the Royal Docks through its embracing as part of its economic plan of the transition, a just transition to the green economy, which is all about technology, digital, data and innovation with our partners, be it East Ham College across the road or University of East London in the Royal Docks, or University College London, who we have entered into a memorandum of understanding to deepen our bonds and our partnership because they are now part of the Newham family. Newham Sparks Data Campus be a first in London. It aligns to our intent that we've stated since September 2021 for Newham to become the local data economy, which is only going to grow and grow and grow and is worth billions as a contribution to the UK economy. There was a white paper published by the UK government in the spring of 2021 that set out the UK government's intent for this country to position the UK as the preeminent #1 destination on this planet for data economy and digital startups, to circumvent and jump over the United States of America and the Republic of China. That is a national plan, and there are going to be more national plans in the arena of innovation and technology under whatever government is in place at the next general election, including, if it's a Labour-led government, local growth plans. Every single Labour-led authority in this country is investing their thought leadership, capital monies, and their time in incubating local economies that are fit for purpose and for the future. And the Newham Sparks Data Campus, based on the work that we've done with the University of College London, will enable our residents, our young people, our residents that are currently in work and are really wanting to increase their household income so that they can lift themselves out of poverty. We've got an opportunity to create 5,500 high-skilled, high-income jobs. And that's the reason why we're making a 1.2 million capital investment, which is a drop in the ocean of all the capital investment that goes into highways, into our public realm, into our schools, into our facilities for our elderly residents, into the money that we are investing in housing delivery, the £2 billion that Siobhan is going to talk to at no doubt some length. So I commend every single member of cabinet and senior officers in believing in that vision of our future and ensuring and committing to its sustainability, not over the next year, not only over the next 3 years, but over the next 5, 10 years, because our residents deserve an administration that's going to be leading growth for them. So I'll conclude on that, and at that juncture, I will hand over, I think it is to Councillor James Asser.
I think you're right. Thank you, Chair. So I will not go into the huge amounts of detail there is on this, but just to go through it, the budget for environment and sustainable transport is very heavily focused on delivering our manifesto goals and looking at our longer term vision for improving the borough, both to make it cleaner and healthier, but also a better place to live on a long term basis. Councillor Ali has already mentioned about the long term capital investments of up to 69 million on active and sustainable travel. So this is a significant number of manifesto pledges that will be dealt with by the implementation of the projects covered in this. And that includes things like healthy school streets, which we've been rolling out over the last couple of years, which have been changing the way people get to school and making roads much safer for children coming in and out of school and for parents, knowing that they're not going to be run down, and also tackling pollution that affects children, particularly much younger children as they go in and out of school. Our road safety initiatives, which have been reducing dangerous driving, illegal left turns, people driving on the streets and making our roads safer in a borough where we have some of the worst road traffic accident rates in the country. And that's making it safer for pedestrians, for cyclists and for other drivers, knowing that they're safe on the roads. Improving facilities for cycling, including bike hangers, where investment from other sources has been very low over recent years, but there is a huge demand across the capital, and we have a huge waiting list here, which we want to try and start tackling. If you invest in that kind of thing, it will allow people to have the choice to start cycling, which we know there is a demand for, and also tackling things like traffic in residential areas where the growth of the sat-nav and the growth of car use over the last decade or so has made a lot of residential road runs and not the kind of quiet, safer roads for residents that they used to be. And also our investment in electric vehicle charging points, which is obviously a growth industry as everyone starts to move to electric vehicles. And we look to the point where electric vehicles are the only ones available for sale. And many of these would be difficult to live without an injection of additional funds for areas we have to invest in. We're also going to invest in more in our parks. We've had a programme of moving towards a better state of public spaces, 1 green flag to 6, with a growth programme for the next 2 years already in place. And we know that since that's become hugely important to people, particularly as we see the number of flats in the borough increase where people don't have private gardens. People have been rediscovering their parks and want proper investment in them. And part of that is investment in children's play areas. A lot of them are in need of refreshment and modernisation, but also new investment. And I know that's something from the correspondence I get that is important to a lot of people, particularly with children, obviously, but also looking to improve the quality of our public spaces. And we're also going to be investing in street lighting to make sure we can improve it, but also adaptation to make sure it's working for the streets it's on. Modern technology allows us to be more flexible than the old days when they were either off and on. We're going to take advantage of that to improve safety, but also improve the quality of life on those roads. A number of years ago, we started the programme of Keep a New and Moving, which is £100 million of investment over 10 years. That programme continues, investing in our roads and pavements, making sure they're well maintained and conditioned as we go forward over the next couple of years. In addition to that long term, we also have an eye on the day-to-day as well as year-on-year improvements. So there is investment in street cleaning, waste collection, and day-to-day investment in our roads and maintenance. Councillor Wilson made the important point about growth in the borough. It is perhaps not the glamorous headline grabbing stuff about big projects, but actually growth brings with it costs and demands. Yeah. We know there is a huge amount of development going on around the borough and huge amounts planned up from Stratford around the Royal Docks and the potential forthcoming Beckton Riverside, which will bring 15,000 homes. With that comes people, it comes litter, it comes waste, it needs bins collected, roads we have to adopt, all of that comes with costs. And so there is future proofing in this to make sure we're leaving the budget and the management of the council is in good condition as we go forward. It is no good leaving these things. It should be ongoing management. So we're future proofing that as the borough grows. And we're also looking at things that are coming through from government initiatives, such as the way we have to collect waste and pick up things. Government initiatives come through all the time to improve environmental collections. That comes with the costs, and we've written those into here too. And I should also say there is background investment. There's significant investment looked at for our Folkestone Road depot. Again, it's not something many people will see, but I think it's always important to say that whilst the frontline services and what people see on the streets are important, they can't function without good back office systems, good facilities for staff, and how we manage things. It's like building a house without good foundations. That depot is responsible for much of our frontline services and maintenance of our fleet. It is looking tired and it needs investment to make sure we've got well looked after staff and in good quality buildings. And so that will in itself help maintain our frontline services. So there's a range of things in there. I will leave it there, Chair, but I think it brings together what we committed to in the manifesto. It brings together the work we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years to improve the quality of the borough and actually deal with some of the areas that have been overlooked in past years, but actually need investment in, and where we're getting a lot of clamour and demand from across the borough to make it safer and a better place to live.
Very much. And then I'm going to be inviting Councillor Colin Reid Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Colin Lee Parkway, Cabinet Member for Crime Community Safety. The budget proposal here today of over 1 million investment into community safety budgets are a direct response to the manifesto commitments made in May 2022 in the area of the crime and community safety. However, I do want to add at this point that 12 years of austerities imposed on local government has severely impacted the resources available to us as a council. Despite this, we are still investing in the services that are important to our residents. When I took up my role in May as the lead member for this directorate, I embarked on a programme of engagement with businesses, residents and local councillors to find out what their issues were and what most affected them. What residents said to me was, ASB and environmental crime are a growing issue in this borough. Residents don't always feel safe, and what they want to see is more uniformed officers on our streets. And they also wanted to have meaningful, trusted relationships between them and the police. Residents repeatedly came back with their desire to see a service that is there for them at the time they need it most. Our residents have spoke and we are listening. I am proud of the additional resources being channeled into the out of hours noise service and the antisocial behaviour service. This service will ensure that in the early hours of the morning between Thursday to Sunday, should residents need us, we will be there. The increased investment set out in the budget will enable us to increase the number of community safety officers patrolling our streets. This increases will ensure the capacity of the service to respond to residents' needs is greatly enhanced. We are investing money into services to ramp up our work around hate crime, women's safety, violence against women and girls, and modern day slavery, to name but a few. And lastly, we are investing in our regulatory and licensing division, which due to demographic pressures, as we've heard today, have some of the heaviest workloads of the authorities in this country. These include the deaths, births and marriages services, trading standard teams, environmental health teams, and lastly, the licensing team. The investment in all of these services will deliver for everybody a safer and cleaner Newham. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I'm going to be inviting Councillor Shaban Mohammed to talk about housing delivery as it pertains to the HRA, and then I'll come in on some additional elements, but over to you.
So I think the word I want to really use is stability. And I think, you know, when we came in 2018, we inherited a real struggle of a housing service and a waiting list that was really massive. And, you know, I think it's hats off to the finance team, Mayor, that we actually started building homes for our residents. We delivered on 1,000 homes on last term, and we continue delivering on 1,500 new homes. And I think the thing that we've got to look at is stability and what it means to families going into those homes, especially our young people that can get a stable home life and actually exceed in this borough in their education and get good jobs. And I think, you know, it's really, really important that we continue that investment. And also when you're looking at, you know, some of our regeneration estates, I think, you know, I ward councillor in Canning Town, and I think, you know, our version of regeneration is co-production, new homes and new community. And I think, it's really good and reassuring that we've got large amounts of money to invest and deliver for our residents and, continue delivering on new homes. One of the other things I'm going to really talk about, and I know we've been mentioning it today, is about temporary accommodation and the real struggles that when we came in, we had with it. And I think, we've got cost of living crisis, which we're having to deal with, and it's been a perfect storm. This is market failure of the government, because if you look at 2015, everyone, they encourage everyone to go into the PRS licensing scheme, PRS licensing homes in the private rented sector to make sure that, looking at a different style of delivery, and we weren't building social homes. So, it's been a perfect storm of interest rates going up, a cost of living crisis, and we are facing that issue now. And like I said to you, we've got 5,858 residents currently in temporary accommodation, and those numbers are growing, and it's how we deal with that. I talked about the homeless response project earlier, but the main thing is this administration is not putting sticking plasters over cracks. We're dealing with the real issue of temporary accommodation, and it's hats off to Councillor Ali and Conrad Hall that we started up the acquisitions programme, looking at ways of reducing our costs and increase it, having better homes for our residents. So it's been really, really good that this programme is starting to come into place, but it's also what we do with the homeless prevention service, the restructuring that we've been doing, and the continued investment that Councillor Ali and the finance team are putting into the Housing General Fund, which is 10.163 million. The demand pressures on temporary accommodation are not going to go down. They're going to continue going up. And, we're forecasting for 22 and 23 a rise in applications of 16%. So it's essential that we continue putting money into temporary accommodation. It's also, the other thing is homeless pricing increase as well. I mean, what we ain't factored in is the costs of rents going up. And again, these are targeting our residents, and it's leading to a rise in homelessness. So, we are, thanks to Councillor Ali again, to putting that money in, 4 million. One of the things I'm going to talk about is incentivising landlords. We've got a scheme where we're putting 150,000 pounds aside, and it's actually incentivising landlords, and making sure that residents are not being made homeless. So when residents do come to the service, we're providing that service of topping up their rent, making sure that we work with the landlord to prevent homelessness first. That's really, really important that we look at. Yeah, one of the key areas is we're looking at temporary accommodation restructure. And the reason I say this, in 2012, 2013, we had 2,633 units of temporary accommodation. This is increased to 5,763 in July 2022. So the main issues here is how we're going to manage that stock and drive up those standards. So we want to restructure that service. That service has not been restructured in over 10 years. So we want to increase the officers to make sure that we're driving up those standards and making sure that we have decent home standard for all our residents living in this borough. I know Councillor Ali mentioned the rent increase proposal, and I think it's really essential at this time. It's something that we don't want to do, but it's essential because, inflation is rising, going up, our costs are going up, and we've got some real massive programs, capital works, that are going to be delivering, upgrading our properties for our residents. And what we want to do is make sure the capital works programs are on site. We've got building safety as well to deal with, and damp and mould. And also we have to take into considerations the fire safety from the Grenfell report. So all these factors are going to be in place, but we have to make sure that any rent increase is delivering for our residents. And also the other issue here is about energy efficiency. So a lot of our buildings need to be retrofitted to make them more energy efficient. So this is going to be delivery for our residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just really to add, the scale of investment that's been brought forward across live regeneration sites. There's carpenters that we commenced in the first term, and there's been the success of the Custom House ballot just before Christmas last year, which means we can take forward the regeneration plans there that will lead to credible and sustained genuinely affordable homes at social rent levels that will benefit local residents. And then there's the Canning Town piece, but there's lots more that is being considered through the wider One Council approach to strategic housing delivery across deployment of the HRA through borrowing and acquisitions, through our small sites programme, and through investigating and interrogating other redevelopment opportunities and using the expertise of both our in-house teams and Popular Living. And there's a huge amount in the pipeline already under the auspices of our Affordable Homes for Newham programme, Wave 1, and also coming through in the Wave 2 programme that will reflect the 1,500 homes to be delivered in this term. So I just commend these aspects of the finance report to Cabinet, because it's another ongoing demonstration that we're responding to the housing crisis that has become acute. On that note, I'm going to be passing over to Councillor Neil Wilson on behalf of Councillor Sarah Ruiz to talk to the elements as it pertains to children's social care, and you'll touch on family hubs, and then I'll be passing it over to Councillor Joshua Garfield and Councillor Miriam Darwood, by all means, but both of you contribute, and I should say Mumtaz as well. Over to the four of you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So on behalf of Councillor Ruiz, just to commend on page 93, this budget, again, it very parallel with the adult social care budget. We do need to have demographic growth built in, and there's 4 million in this budget for children's care services so that they continue to meet the growing demand. We are no longer the youngest population of the London area, but we're the second youngest in terms of the 0 to 25 cohort. Both my colleague, Councillor Khan, and myself are clearly working with Councillor Ruiz about the improvements on the service provision, particularly regarding the transitions from children's social care to adults. And that is something that has obviously been the view of scrutiny reports over, I think, about 4 or 5 reports, and that is about service transformation. The service transformation elements are contained within the report as outlined to the December Cabinet. I want to stress, because I think we often don't, just in relation to the capital investment in family hubs. On page 93, there's 3.8 million in this budget for family hubs to provide wraparound support for families, whether it's in our professional lives away from being local elected members. Those of us who have experienced education or children's social care often think the major problem with the service, and it's mirrored in a discussion I had yesterday about adults, is that people are often referred to end of different places. Wraparound care should mean that we have one point of referral, one key worker as far as possible, but also to wraparound support for families, because we cannot look after our young people without the engagement of carers and their families. So 3.8 million, I think, is a significant capital investment. And if I might neatly segue, because I forgot to mention, we're also putting some capital in to more targeted accommodation under supported accommodation in terms of adults, one of which would be towards learning difficulties. Learning difficulties accommodation is quite clearly targeted, and it is something that we need to grow and acquire and build. It's so often the case that we can actually make savings on the longer term. That's start of a journey, Chair, and I think I'll leave it there and pass over to.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As is something that we keep repeating in this council, we have made a repeated commitment to make Newham one of the best places for a child to grow up in and for children to live in. A huge part of a child's life is their process through their journey of education. And that's why all of the efficiency savings that we put forward have no bearing on the quality or the quantity of the provision that we offer children and young people. Every single penny of savings is through the restructure that we have done to our SEND department to make it more efficient and have better use of technology so that the focus can be on co-producing good provision for children and young people. And there is no cut in frontline provision. That's a commitment that we made when we stood for the election, and it's a commitment that we've kept despite the external challenges facing budgets across the service. On top of the investments that Councillor Wilson talked about that sit within Councillor Ruiz's portfolio on family hubs, we of course identified in an inspection 2 years ago need for better provision for our children with special educational needs and disabilities. Our SEND provision has got to improve, and the improvement journey is something that I have been focused on since I began the job in May of last year. We have restructured the service. We have written our written statement of action that we have delivered to the Department for Education, Ofsted and the CQC. We found those 4 key areas of improvement, and we have begun to enact the principles that we promised in that document. Among them is, of course, the investment that I came to Cabinet last year to talk about, the £1.4 million, which allowed us to clear our EHCP backlog 3 months early. Now got a team of officers working on current EHCPs to take us forward to September, by which time we will be meeting 75% of all EHCP applications in the borough within the specified 20-week deadline. I anticipate that we'll meet it early, but I wouldn't like to tempt fate. We will be meeting it on time by that point, and that is through the investment we talked about. The other growth items that we've put forward are to, of course, ensure that not just the quantity of applications is maintained and kept on top of, quality. We have an increased focus on co-production. That means that our partners in health, in schools, in the local authority, and of course, centering that young person and their family, means that whatever the HCP produced, it's one that reflects the needs of that young person and delivered in a timely fashion, so that it doesn't arrive when their needs have become more acute. We are drawing down from capital funding from the Department for Education that has been brought to Cabinet previously to ensure that we have the specialist places in the borough that we were found to be insufficient on, which is one of the reasons that we send so many of our children and young people outside of the borough. We want as many children as possible to be educated at home here in Newham, close to their families, within their communities, and nearby to their support network, without which no child can thrive. That's exactly why we're building these family hubs and investing in that wraparound service for children, because it isn't just the job of the school or the educational setting to see that child or young person through the journey. It's the job of all of the public services that are responsible for their quality of life, their health, education, and everything thus. So all of the savings that we put forward in this year's budget are to do 2 things. One, to meet the manifesto commitments that we made to the electorate, through which we gained our majority to run this local authority last year. And 2, to meet the promises that we've made statutorily to the Department for Education on our written statement of action, but also the promises that we've made to families, that the experience that they will have of our SEND service will improve, and it will get better, and it will be one that they can quite near in the future look at as a positive experience that provided the crucial services their child needed when they needed it. That's a commitment that we've made repeatedly. It's one that I will keep making, and that's exactly what the growth items in this budget seek to deliver. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And then I'm going to be inviting, oh, I'm so sorry, Mariam, I'm just over to you.
Well, I wanted to touch on how we came about the way we have in the budget. And one of those ways is we feel we've tried a novel approach where we've been speaking to young people and children directly. We've been visiting schools and youth zones to see what priorities our children and young people have for our council. And I want to share with colleagues what they shared with us. So their priorities were continuing the access to youth services that we deliver, a concerted effort to provide genuinely affordable housing, which we're doing, increasing the availability of extra activities, which we're also doing, a clean and healthy environment, which Councillor Ass has spoken earlier, attention to street cleanliness, which Councillor Lee Parkway spoke on, ensuring the continuation of the council tax reduction scheme, which we're also doing, and a continued provision of heat for free. These are the priorities that our children and young people have, and these are also our priorities. It's not that we have to just have within the youth, it's that we actually reduce our priorities with that. Because as well as being council executive representatives, we are in the borough, and so that's something that we're really proud to have child this year, and I'm sure that we will continue that engagement throughout the year, especially ahead of the next cycle.
And well done on the youth engagement. I think it's really encouraging to see that actually we're putting into practice from member side the children and young people's charter and making sure that they're being invited to participate, and that needs to be a continual or feature, not only in the budget setting process for future years, but in everything that we do. So well done for that. Okay. I'm going to be now moving on to the area of investment to help drive forward the people-powered Newham and widening participation. I'll invite Councillor Charlie McLean and Councillor Sabia Kamali to talk to this.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to concentrate on the resident experience side of my portfolio, and I'm sure that Councillor Kamali will pick up on the resident engagement side. So you recall that in November, we presented quite a sobering annual complaints report to Cabinet, and it was noted that there was a truly unacceptable rise in complaints in 21-22. So I won't rehash the reasons, as to why today, but, as part of our wider resident experience programme, there's a proposal in the budget to invest some £200,000 of growth into our contact centre, take our call answering rate to 95%, ensure that those residents who choose to contact us by phone can get through in a timely fashion. Not everybody currently feels comfortable accessing services digitally for a variety of reasons. And so the investment should stop call queues, reduce the abandoned call rate, and create space to start much needed improvements and transformation within the service. This investment will also support our residents' experience standards and resident charter to enable us to maintain regular training and coaching time to support the level of quality and consistent answering rates that our residents expect and rightly deserve. This investment will also enable staff to improve their knowledge and potential for right first time interactions, which is so important across all of our service areas, and with a longer term aim of reducing the demand on contact for the council, because we will be getting it right first time. There's also a proposal to trial the opening of our contact centre on Saturday mornings from 9 AM to 1 PM to enable residents who are unable to do so during the week to make contact. And I think we're actually the only local authority, and so it will be good for residents to be able to contact us whenever they wish. As the Mayor said about our people power agenda, there is a 1.6 million that's going into the assemblies that was agreed at Cabinet, and that's from the neighbourhood portion of community infrastructure levy. Sorry, get my words out. Community infrastructure levy, and I don't know if Councillor Kamali, yes, to add anything on that, but yeah, that was made at Cabinet, the last Cabinet meeting, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Sabia.
No, thank you. I think you need to add something on that, but in terms of our experience on that, engagement was around council tax, the cost of living crisis, which had a huge impact on residents' families here. I agree with Conrad. It has been a challenging year for all, and increasing the council tax would have added the extra burden for most of those families. Generally, those working poor and those on universal credit. So the biggest concern for residents is reduction on council tax, and I'm really glad that our budget also includes that. So I think that was one of the after cost of living. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then the final area relating to budget elements will enable us to continue our advocacy on behalf of Newham residents through our championing their rights as an administration, be it on the London living wage that Councillor Neil Wilson has powerfully spoken about, particularly how it will help elevate the condition of those most vulnerable households, inevitably with the weight and challenge on women. But also the ongoing investments, that vital work that champions the rights of renters in providing support across a raft of welfare provision matters to optimize income through ensuring that everyone who has an entitlement to benefit is maximizing that benefit, and also campaigning around the ongoing requirements from national government to take the housing crisis in this country and in the capital that we face acutely seriously. Our campaign to end the right to buy, our campaign for more monies to be able to put into building homes our people can afford, and also the significant scale of investment required to meet our decarbonisation plans for the borough through retrofit. And then similarly, our campaigning work around all forms of hate, and in particular, there are important sections in the council's corporate plan relating to women's safety and empowering women, as well as the range of hate crime, be that anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or LGBT plus hate crime. And I'm sure many of you would have read in horror about the murder of the 16-year-old trans girl over the weekend. And it's another regretful, sad, tragic reminder of how hate can manifest in such extreme and horrendous ways. And then our ongoing work around climate response. And John, I don't know whether you want to talk to any element of that in light of your role as our Climate Emergency Commissioner.
Well, the expenditure on action to tackle the climate emergency and improve air quality runs right through all the council's activities, and the different areas that we've heard presented here mentioned many of them. A lot of it's to do with transport and environment, you know, with the school streets and the low traffic neighborhoods. They're facilitating the use of active travel and electric vehicle use, improving recycling to reduce waste. All this is reduction in the pollution of the environment and the increase in the emission of greenhouse gases. We've heard about the housing, the retrofit program. It also applies to regeneration and development, you know, with using materials with less embedded carbon and design, which includes improving the public realm and protecting surrounding green spaces. It cuts across all these things. And in fact, we are going, I think, moving up another level with the arrival next week of a director of climate action. And we are preparing the report, the annual report on climate action this year. And there'll be another meeting of the climate emergency working group in 3 months to have a look at this. So, I mean, I think when we talk about the budget, it's all the different areas are contributing. And I think the lesson is we've got to work together, pull together, know what each area is doing and be ready to coordinate where necessary. So I think, it's everybody's job because it's a climate emergency. We started this, it's happening. Everybody realized, I think last year, the climate emergency is here. We must try and stop it getting worse.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we've heard across the piece core elements, but this is a detailed report that highlights simply the complexity of running and managing a significant unitary authority that is Newham. And having spent the past months working on this, I am sufficiently assured that you're all well versed in all the details. So I'm going to suggest that in the interests of time, if we can just note the recommendations and I can invite us through the process of approval. Are there any final comments, Zulfikar, that you would like to make before I do?
Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate the contribution that my cabinet and executive colleagues made in terms of highlighting and elaborating a number of vital proposals which are there for very obvious reasons, because they are our manifesto commitments. That's what we said to people we will deliver, and assurances from each director and the cabinet lead that the systems we are putting forward are not going to have any significant impact on the service delivery. And the focus of our priority should be on adult social care, environment, green budget, improving access to services, making sure that we are designing services for future, as my colleague Joshua said, for future proofing. The needs of our organization are absolutely critical, and the role of IT in modernizing organization like Newham is absolutely critical. That's where I think it needs to lie in order for us to achieve saving in the long run, so that we don't have to go through the service savings and efficiency through the process, because the government is not likely to fund us any better than they've done during the last 13 years, unless there's a change in government, and a government that recognizes the needs of local people and gives it a priority, invest where it's needed. So without further ado, Chair, I'd like you to move the recommendation of page 10, 11 and 12.
Thank you very much. Just one final comment I just wanted to also emphasise is in line with the manifesto commitment and the corporate plan. This is our first proper green budget, and in the coming years, there's a pretty impressive green process and framework that we have developed, and more and more of our future budgets have significant sections into the decarbonisation of Newham and the council, with an eye to the 2030 neutral and 2045 carbon zero targets that we have to reach. So can I just draw everyone's attention to the big page number 98, big page number 99, and big page number 100. And note that there are two sets of recommendations, one relating to what we are going to be approving and one relating to what we need to note that will be going to full council, and also to revise, not to forget, there's a supplementary agenda, which is an updated Appendix 5 HRA summary plan, which will be in the full council papers that will be tomorrow. I am not intending to read all of that out.
27.
But I am going to be asking all of cabinet members only and directed. Are we all in agreement of the recommendations as set out, section 2, 2.1, all the way through to 2.27? Is that approved?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair.
Yeah.
I have a meeting with children in care, so I'll need to leave at 1 o'clock.
Okay, fine. Yes. Colleagues, in light of we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more cabinet papers. I am going to effectively chair and aim that we finish by 1:20. Okay? Good luck. Right. Fine, thank you for letting me know. Thank you, Anthony. Right, so we're now moving on to the new agenda item. I think it's 7, isn't it?
6, 8.
It's new agenda item 8, Canning Town Old Library National Lottery Heritage Fund application. Just by way of a brief introduction, and I will invite Councillor Jane Lofthouse to say a few words. But in essence, this is a paper that is seeking approval from Cabinet so that the council can proceed with submitting an application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And it relates to our pre-existing plans that we successfully secured levelling up money for when we were awarded £40 million of levelling up monies, and it links to plans that are already in place concerning widening skills and job opportunities for local residents, particularly in this new and exciting arena of digital and data economy that we are incubating in Newham. It relates to the old Canning Town Library site on the Barking Road near our significant town centre that has been emerging over the last 10 years, albeit quite an interesting journey. But in essence, it's a really exciting proposition, and the report just details the background to making this application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, details relating to the core programme as funded by the levelling up money that we secured, and what the vision is for the building. And it's simply to seek approval from Cabinet that we can submit the bid, and then any future determinations around what happens next will have to be coming back to Cabinet in line with our governance procedures. Jane.
Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Cabinet for Equality, Integration and Culture. I won't add much because of the time, but I did want to point out that it is an integral aspect of our cultural strategy, which was launched in March, Building Newham's Creative Future, which is designed to enrich, develop Newham's culture, creative industries, and heritage awareness, which will be a benefit to residents, but also contribute to economic growth within the borough. An important part is the partnerships which we will form with creative and educational partnerships with key organisations, including Royal Docks, B&A and UCL at East Bank, which the Mayor mentioned earlier. And these will support the centre in providing, as we've said, an exciting new way to access employment and higher learning for our young people, very in particular, in coding management, digital, skills, digitization, artificial intelligence, and those are highlighted. For now.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, colleagues? Okay, I'm going to be asking if we could just go to the recommendations on big page number, one second. Big page number 610. So the recommendations set out in the report. The Mayor and Cabinet is recommended to 1.1 agree to the submission of an application of up to £5 million National Lottery Heritage Fund by Newham Council officers. 2.1.2 delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy and Housing in consultation with the lead member for Inclusive Economy and Housing Delivery and everything else, and the Deputy Cabinet Member for Quality, Social Integration and Cultural Development and Delivery Grant if the application is successful. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
All right, fine. Now we're going to be moving on to the next agenda item, which is the Stratford Vision Report. So this is probably one of the most significant master planning approaches for the Stratford and surrounding area that the council has embarked on for possibly since its creation as a borough, I would say. I mean, I know the Olympic Park and the stadium and all of that in the run-up to 2012 was important for London, but that's marginal in the context of how significant and important Stratford is, because it has a designation in the London plan as being a addition to the central economic zone of the capital city, which is the greatest one on earth. And as it has often been said, London is moving east, but I suggest rather London is east. And it's always been here. We're edgy, we're fun, and we're eclectic, and we are diverse. And that's not just the population in Newham, it's the populations in Tower Hamlets, Hackney, and Waltham Forest, because I need to name check our Growth Borough Partnership colleagues. Otherwise, they'll give me a kick in at the next board meeting. But going back to the Stratford Vision, it's all about ensuring that there's a coherence to our ongoing investment in the Stratford major town centre, but also that is something that benefits other parts of Stratford Ward, West Ham Ward, Maryland, Stratford Olympic Park being really significant in the context of transition, and also in the further edges of Stratford Ward towards Bromley by Bow boundary, where there's the Pudding Mill Lane development coming up, Aber Voyage is there at the moment, and where we've got the Sugar House development that is quite interesting to experience. Also, the Stratford Vision is going to be really significant for all of our inclusive growth ambitions and the designation of Stratford as the borough's first ever green zone. I will pause there. I will invite Darren Mackin to talk to some specific elements of this, and unless there are any questions, which I would welcome, we can ease into recommendations.
Darren Mackin, Director of Community Wealth Builder. I want to speak for I think one of the main principles of this vision is to set up the council aspiration. We've organised it around 5 keys within Stratford, and within those zones, the activity the council undertakes itself, and there'll also be activity that we're working with third sector partners and the private sector to deliver. So what this document does is really puts the council aspiration and vision into those discussions for the first time in a strategic and organised way, which will make it more likely that we'll deliver those aspirations.
Thank you very much. Questions, colleagues? Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll come in. There's a reference on page 720 in the main body of the report under the cross-cutting theme of people, a place to be healthy and well. I welcome the suggestion that we're not just having enablement of significant new housing provision on the site, but of major new health facilities in the heart of the town centre. Stratford is not just obviously I think now the busiest interchange on the railway network, but is clearly, as I think the mayor's already alluded to, the centre of gravity within the London morphology is definitely around the E15 postcodes. And because of that, I think to cross-reference, if I may, Chair, with what is well known in parlance as gentrification, but is rather a clumsy phrase about sometimes the socioeconomic composition of the population. I think it's important that we do highlight in all of our planning and reassurance for our residents that we don't create a sort of, and I think this is what this plan is actually addressing, a sort of poorer Stratford versus something which is developing on the Olympic Park side. So I think it's a more integrated approach, and particularly welcoming how we're linking it to the theme of provision for services which have sometimes been neglected when we've been doing other things. I think it ties in with the local plan provision as well, Chair, as well. Obviously, in that sort of way that we're integrating communities. Communities can grow, but they do need facilities like health provision that's accessible. We do need good quality housing. They also need, I think, our reassurance that we're looking after all of our residents, not some sort of gentrification thing that has been highlighted, I think, in other regards, not least of which that there's, I think now 750,000 single bedroom apartments on the Olympic site that is same level as Belgravia.
Okay. Any comment, Darren?
Yeah, I think so of course, I think that's the benefit in having the vision. So the vision said that more than just the spatial element, also to the product community and sort of health aspects as well. Yeah.
Okay, super. Any other questions? Nope. All right, so can I just draw everyone's attention to recommendations on big page number 689? For the reasons set out in the report and its appendices, Cabinet is recommended to 2.1, adopt the Stratford Vision, see Appendix 1, as a key guiding document that sets out the Council's ambitious approach for Stratford for the next 15 years, and 2.2, delegate authority to the Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy and Housing to make any minor amendments to the documents prior to its formal publication. It's going to be designed up and do we all agree?
Agreed.
We've agreed to all of that. Then the next thing is agenda item 10, Upton Gardens, a unit acquisition. Over to Zulfikar and Councillor Shawar Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair, and I don't think I need to remind colleagues, as we had earlier, about the homelessness and accommodation costs. We are addressing this through many fronts, and acquisition property is one element that contributes to that challenge we have. This report recommends purchasing 42 residential units, Upton Garden. These will comprise of 11 one-bedroom, 26 two-bedroom, and 5 three-bedroom units. We have had independent evaluation, and that confirms that the price that we've negotiated is in line with the current market value. Proposal is, as we normally do in such situation, that we lease the management of these properties to a third party through a process that we go through in terms of making sure that it's meets the financial requirements and the procurement requirements. We expect, if agreed, the completion will take place in March in next month, and the funding for the purchase will be through general fund borrowing, which is already there. And the Cabinet is asked to approve the recommendation to purchase this. Thank you.
Shabs, anything else you'd like?
I just want to really thank Zulfi and Giles and his team for all the work they've been doing around the acquisitions. It's a critical time now. So these acquisitions are going to really make a difference to our budget, help our residents, keep residents in borough. And again, you know, it's about stability that, you know, is key to, you know, the the homes we're providing. So, you know, I just really welcome all the work that the guys are doing and really supportive of the acquisitions programs, and long may it continue delivering for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay, recommendation on big page number 788 to 789. Quite long. I'm not going to read them. Don't worry. Do we all agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to agenda item 11. Highways and Sustainable Transport Annual Spending Submission to Transport for London. Over to you, James.
Thank you. This will be familiar to everyone because we've obviously done these in previous years, but this is our spending submission to TfL for our LIP programme that we people will be pleased to see that this is sort of back and with funding again. People will be aware that it was disrupted during the pandemic when TfL went through their funding crisis, and a lot of this was stopped. And obviously it's a hugely important funding to boroughs because it funds a lot of the work we wouldn't be able to fund otherwise. See through the proposal, a lot of this matches in with what we've been talking about in the budget anyway. Around low traffic neighbourhoods, healthy school streets, leading traffic conventions, cycle training. And that cycle training is important because this is where the funding comes for that, and that particularly for children, that's something that's welcomed as well, plus as well as adults. One thing I would pull out of this just in my introduction is around the borough 20-mile-per-hour limit. We've made a commitment on that. It's very important. 40% of our roads are, but we've made a commitment to move to a 20-mile-an-hour borough, as a majority of boroughs now have, and TfL are moving that way too. But that comes with a cost and a lot of work we've been doing. So this helps fund through that. So there are other proposals in there, but I won't go through them in detail. If you can read them. I also have Murray Woodburn, guru on all such things, TfL and travel related. If Murray wishes to add anything.
No, I don't think so. Councillor Asher, you've covered all of that. So in the interest of expediency, I'll be quiet for once.
Okay, right. Anyone else? Any questions?
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment, Jerry. I welcome the suggestions, particularly around the 20-mile per hour speed limitation. There's a recent on that there's a reduction of 25% in casualties and accidents, and that's what we're something that we ought to be prioritizing. So well done for it. Thank you.
Super, great, okay.
Just how that survival rates, particularly for children, jump significantly by lowering that. And whilst, you know, speeding is always an issue, whatever the speed limit is, there is a general rule of thumb that if you reduce the overall speed limit, you reduce the amount of speed that's going on. So if you've got 30, people feel safe to go at 35, you lower it, even if people feel like they speed that amount. So you get a proportionate response, even if people aren't sticking to the limit. So overall, there are benefits either way.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Now, if we can go to the recommendations on big page number 800, and it goes on to 801, big page number that is. Are we all in agreement with the recommendations? Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so Joy, we've agreed all of that. And then we're going to the final cabinet paper. Agenda item 12 now. Highways Framework Contracts Inflation Adjustment 2023. Over to you, Councillor James Asser.
Yes, not exciting like the previous one, technical but important. And Councillor Ali mentioned earlier in the budget report about inflation. So this relates to our contract in regards highways maintenance. There is a clause within it relating to inflation, which we're invoking a year early and moving to aiming to move to kind of quarterly reviews of this, so we're staying on top of the inflation changes. Councillor Ali mentioned it is starting to fall, but it is still at a 40-year high. So this is something we need to do in terms of kind of good management of the contract and of the budget, and does put us in line with what a lot of other boroughs are doing. And we have looked at what other boroughs are doing to make sure we're kind of in line and managing that properly. Murray, that was a very brief introduction, which I thought you were welcome given the time. But Murray, do you want to add anything as you're still on screen?
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, Councillor Asser, is that we have a null contract effectively. So we are not obliged to give our contractors any work, but they're not obliged to accept it either. So given the increasing inflationary pressures that they were experiencing on the cost of materials and other things, we would have run the risk of actually not getting any work done if we didn't sort of engage on this inflationary adjustment. So I just wanted to sort of give that bit of context to provide the background. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, are there any questions, colleagues? No? Right, okay, so just recommendations on big page number 8 and I'm just going to be inviting cabinet members to advise they all agree with the recommendations.
Great, Chair.
Agreed.
So that's agreed. And then if we're done. If you do have your cabinet paper in hard copy, could you please make sure you either hand it back to Joy, because there's been pages essential away with you in one of the confidential disposal bins in Dockside or one of the offices. And we're now going to conclude. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Yep.